Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Lou Ferrante. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, good. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time to come on my show.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Great beginning. Did you do that yourself with the gun?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I do all my own editing, all that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, and you're from, it said Bristol, Connecticut.
Yeah,
That's your hometown.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was away with a guy. I don't know if you ever heard of Marcos Pappas. Great guy. Did time with him in the feds. We became really close. One of my best friends. He had like a 35-year sentence. He got out after like 22 or 24. I think he ended up doing in the end. Unfortunately, he got picked up again. But Connecticut native his whole life.
Name sounds familiar. Sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah, he's old school gangster. Unfortunately, he's back in. Not sure what exactly is going on. But anyway, I'm wishing him the best. I hope it's a misunderstanding or something, or he gets out. He's a great guy. Anyway, shout out to Marcos Pappas. Great guy. He's known throughout the feds as a legal eagle. He's helped so many people get out of jail. He taught me everything I knew about the law, helped me reverse one of my cases. I became a legal eagle because of him. Taught me how to read case law, how to understand it. And I became an expert at it because of him. Great guy.
And they're helping other inmates, right? They don't like when you do that either.
Yeah, big time. A lot of times when the lawyers kind of like just sell out their clients and it happens all day long, you have nobody when you're in there. You're locked in a cell. You got no friends. You got no family sometimes. You burned all your bridges. You know, you've been away for years. Guys have different kinds of stories and they're all tragic. And a lot of times they have nobody. So they'd come to him. And eventually when I learned law, they'd come to me. You know, you're able to help somebody who's been in a mess and you get them some relief in the courts. You know, I'm not one to say everybody, everybody should be let out of jail. There's plenty of people who belong in jail. When I was there, I belonged in jail, but a lot of people don't belong there as long as they are. And that's a tragedy. So yeah, we helped a lot of people.
Yeah. If you get caught with someone's paperwork now, you get in trouble for it.
What do you mean someone's paperwork? What's that?
I
didn't understand.
If you have someone's paperwork in your possession,
like that's somebody that ratted?
No, legal work.
Oh, legal work. Really?
Yeah. If you get caught with someone else's legal work in your possession in prison, they put you in the hole.
So that's crazy. That's something new. So when I was in, I used to carry around people's paperwork all the time because I'd be working on their case for them. I filed briefs, everything. I would have never left the hole. That's so draconian. It's gotten worse. So they want the lawyers to sell you out, and then they don't want you to be able to get inmate help either. Crazy.
No, they want to block it every chance they get. So you have an insane story, and I wanted to know, people know about the hijacking the trucks and stealing the trucks and all that stuff. I wanted to know, when were you first ever introduced to the Gottis?
Well, I it's hard to pinpoint, but at some point or another, through a series of associations, I ended up pretty much living like I was in and out of his house every day. Peter Gotti. So John's older brother, Peter, was he's a capo at the time, eventually became the boss of the family. And now, unfortunately, he's deceased. He died in jail. He was a good guy. And he wasn't stupid. A lot of times they portray him as a dumb guy in a lot of the books and documentaries. He wasn't a dumb guy. I have to tell you, the Gottis were sharp. They were all street guys, all of them across the board. There was one maybe that wasn't the sharpest, but it wasn't Peter. Peter was sharp, and he was a smart guy, and he wasn't greedy. He let people earn. He was a good guy, and he didn't want, actually, he was good. You know, he'd sort of try to dissuade you from pursuing that route for life, but he was there for you if you needed him. So anyway, I was in and out of Pete Gotti's house just about every day for the better part of, like, I guess 6 or 7 years until I went away. So sort of, I have nothing bad to say about them that I could think of. So
Senior was in prison at this time already, right?
So John Senior was on the street when I was still on the street and in and out of that house, in and out of Peter's house, but eventually he went away.
Do you remember the first time you ever met Senior?
You'd see Senior all the time. I'm in Ozone Park every day. South Ozone Park is where the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club was. So, it wasn't like, people try to say, like, I wasn't best friends with John Senior, obviously. There was a whole world of generations apart between me and him. But you'd see him by the club. He came and went. Nobody really ever talks about it too. Fat Bob used to drive Senior around. I don't know. Nobody talks about Fat Bob ever. Fat Bob was the guy who drove Senior around, and you'd see Fat Bob pick up John in Howard Beach. You'd wave hello. You'd see him at the club. You'd wave hello. Fat Bob was the guy who drove him around every day, for the most part. But I mean, look, that was like what actually intrigued me is when I was doing my research and I saw that for my book Borgata, Rise of Empire. I saw that Gas Pipe was always looking to clip John, and he couldn't get his hit team couldn't get him. And I'm like, well, they couldn't get him. You could have killed John any day of the week. He was driving around with Fat Bob. Fat Bob was no bodyguard. He was just a big fat guy. He couldn't even get out of his seat if he tried, fast. But a nice guy. I'm not knocking Fat Bob. He was a nice guy, rest his soul. But whatever the case is, John was around. You're in the neighborhood. You see everybody. If you go into Peter Gotti's house back then, this is what nobody's ever done this. Someone should do a tour of Howard Beach. You'd make the right as soon as you came over like the Van Wyck Expressway. You'd make the right into New Howard Beach. You'd pass Vic Amuso's house, head of the Lucchese family, on the right-hand side. You make a left, you go to Peter Gotti's house. You go straight down, make another right. You got Angelo Ruggiero's house. You got Johnny Knig's house. You got Joseph Messino's house, Joe Messino, boss of the Bonanno family. They were all in New Howard Beach. All the bosses, the underbosses were all living there. So literally in one day, you could drive from one end of Howard Beach to the other and wave to everybody. Assuming you're out of jail at the time. Sometimes, these guys were away, and then you weren't waving to nobody. But in other words, they all lived right there. I'd see Joe Messino on his porch. Hey, Joe, how you doing? Joe wave. This was like what it was back then. It's like almost like it's if you driving down your own neighborhood in Bristol, Connecticut, and you wave to there's Joey, there's Frankie, it was the same thing. So it wasn't a big deal to see these people on a regular. They're around. And then John's trip from Howard Beach to the club in South Ozone Park, you might even spot him on Cross Bay Boulevard. You could pull up at a light on Cross Bay Boulevard and see him in a car. So, it's not impossible. Everybody in that area knew John. This is a true story. The day I was either eating pizza or Chinese food in Pete Gotti's living room with young Peter when Big Peter came home, and he had a long look on his face. And, we asked, what's up, Pete? And he said, Sammy went bad. And then I'll never forget it as long as I live. We were the first ones to hear, and he dragged his feet up the stairs. So in Pete's house, you'd walk in the door, and then the living room's to the left, or you could go up along the flight of stairs where the bedrooms were. Other than little Pete's, Pete Jr.'s bedroom was to the right. But I'll never forget watching him lug his body, big man, lug his body up those stairs like he had the weight of the world on top of him. And I remember I said to young Pete, I says, no way, Sammy didn't go bad. There's no way he's going to do like that Frankie Five Angels thing they did in The Godfather when he's going to rat on Michael Corleone, but then he saves him at the last minute. I go, that's what he's going to do. My mind was so mobbed up at that time that I could never have imagined somebody ratting. Like I could never rat. So, Howard, the underboss in my family, he's a tough guy, legitimate tough guy, as you understood it. I understood he was a treacherous guy. People told me that, but I didn't ever thought he was a rat. But then later, if you think about it, if you put the pieces together, if a guy would kill his friends and betray his friends and, set them up and clip them left and right, why wouldn't he take the stand and bury his other friends when he's got to save his own ass? So it basically makes sense if you look back at it. But at that time, I couldn't see that. So I was like, no way. Sammy ain't going sour. There's no way.
A lot of the times he says, oh, he was going to throw me under the bus.
Come on, man. You know what you're in. You know what you're involved in. And John wasn't throwing nobody under the bus. John had a history of going to trial with people. He didn't throw anybody under the bus. John went to trial with Willie Boy Johnson, who was a rat, and John didn't throw Willie Boy under the bus. So why is now John going to throw Sammy under the bus? Sammy was worried that the government was going to figure out that he was killing all these people on his own. And the tapes, John's complaining, going, Sammy wanted this one dead. Sammy wanted that one dead, whether it was Louis Melito or Louis DeBono. Sammy's always, making a move and killing somebody. So John's complaining. So if the jury heard that, Sammy was worried that they might convict Sammy and let John loose. But John wasn't throwing Sammy under the bus. Did John throw Frankie Lowe under the bus? No. John didn't throw Frankie Lowe under the bus. They went to trial together. Frankie Lowe wasn't thrown under the bus. They went to trial. They fought the case together. They got life together. So that's all justifying why you want to rat. No rat ever says, look, I punked out. they always got an excuse. Somebody was going to do something to me, or somebody didn't send me commissary. Somebody didn't take care of my wife. Somebody owed me a couple $100,000, didn't pay me when I need a lawyer. Somebody didn't send a lawyer up to see me. I could have made those excuses every single day of the week. And the guys I was with that stood up could have made those excuses every single day of the week. Look at the arenas. The arenas never ratted. I'm dear friends with Vic Arena Sr., who's still away doing life. And I'm dear friends with Vic Arena Jr., 35 years now. We're dear friends. That's how long we're dear friends. Both of those arenas were hunted by not only Gregory Scarpa, but the government was backing Gregory Scarpa. And supposedly the FBI agent who was handling Gregory Scarpa was given the addresses of the arenas so that he could kill them. And the arenas had every reason to go bad, and they didn't. And then let me tell you something else. I'm going to tell you, I was with Vic Arena Sr. when he wanted some discovery material to fight his case. The guy's serving life. He kept his mouth shut, never ratted. So he sends word to Junior Persico, and he says, listen, where's this discovery material that could help me with my case? And they said, well, you owe a lot of money that you got to straighten out with first before we send that to you. What? The guy's doing life. The guy's fighting for his life. You're gonna. So now he don't have every reason to rat if you want to make excuses, but he still didn't. He could have said, they don't even want to give me the discovery material. They're nickel and diming me over debts on the street. And he never did that. So, I mean, if you want to get technical, there's a man's man who has every reason to rat. If you want to talk about somebody throwing him under the bus, he can't get his own discovery material to fight a life sentence, and he kept his mouth shut. So, and nobody could tell me different from this because I was there for the story. This is firsthand. I was with Vic Sr. when this happened. And as I said, I'm close friends with Vic Jr., Vic Arena Jr. for 35 years now. I know the story inside out. I was there. He asked for that discovery material. He was fighting his case. He couldn't get it. That would have been Sammy's out to say, they're throwing me under the bus. They won't even give me discovery material to fight my case. And he would have ratted. But Vic Arena said, you know what? That's got nothing to do with me and with who I am. And he's in jail now. How many years is Vic? He's going to die in jail unless he gets out on some type of hardship, which he deserves. The poor man is senile. He doesn't even know who he is now. Let him out. But they won't. But whatever the case is, there's a million excuses you could give if you want to rat, or you say to yourself, you know what? Omerta is you take care of things yourself. You got a beef with John. You should have went to trial with John and then killed him in jail. Sammy could have killed him in jail if he wanted to. Sammy knows how to get a shiv and stab him in jail. Why didn't he kill him? You man up. You know how to kill 19 people. You don't know how to kill John Gotti? You could have went in his cell in the morning, stuck a pillow over his face and jammed him. Why didn't you do that? So, you know what I'm saying? It's, come on, be a man. So, look, I don't want to talk about the rats anyway. I just,
what was your feeling once he went bad? What was your feeling on the street? Like, you're sitting in that living room. Are you thinking, damn, I'm in trouble?
No, I believe it or not, I told you, I thought it was fake. I did not believe it was true. It took me a while before it sunk in. And then I saw a lot of guys now worried. So, I had no direct business with Sammy. I was down here. Sammy was up here.
Did you see guys start getting clipped off? Like,
no.
locked up, or no?
So here's the deal. Everybody talks about like John now, like he was Idi Amin, killing everybody in the world. John wasn't like that. If John was like that, John would have been, or the guys around at that time, the Gottis, let's say, they would have been clipping people left and right that they were afraid of. They didn't kill nobody. The Gottis knew I was going away for a long time. I had 3 indictments hanging over my head. I had the FBI following me every day. They could have killed me. No one killed me. So, I'm in and out of that house every day. And first of all, obviously, I knew a lot of things about a lot of people. But even if there's somebody out there who goes, oh, what did he know? He didn't know nothing. I'm in the house every day. If you want to make up stories, it's believable. Your phone records go back and forth to the house every day. You're filmed going in and out of the house every day. You can make something up and get out of jail. So, come on, it's easy enough to get out of jail. If they wanted to clip me, they could have, but they didn't. They weren't animals. They were, when it came to that life, they understood the life. They were good to it, and they understood. They had a good read on people. They missed Sammy. John had a lot of reasons why he missed Sammy. Don't forget, John's whole world was swept out from under him. John grew up with Angelo Ruggiero. He grew up with Johnny Koenig. He grew up with his brother Jeannie, Tony Roach. All those guys were gone. John's got nobody left around him that he grew up with that he could trust from when he's a kid. Willie Boy Johnson went bad. All the guys around him from Queens went bad. So now he's got to balance Brooklyn, and he's got new faces he has to rely on. So it was sort of like a mistake where, but anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about my book.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing I want to ask you is about the song that you did to try to get out of prison. And how that all transpired. Like, what was your thinking behind doing a song to get publicity? Like, what was the deal with that?
So basically what happened was I'm under investigation by the FBI for heists and hijackings, armored cars, you name it, I'm being charged with. And I know I'm going away. They started offering people the witness protection program if they would testify against me. So people are calling me going, Lou, the FBI just left. They offered me the witness protection program if I would give you up. So I'm saying to myself, I'm a young guy. I'm only in my early 20s. I went away when I was 25. So I'm saying to myself, if they're willing to pay for somebody's livelihood or, they dish out money for the rest of their life and give them a new identity, they're really willing to put big resources into me and get me off the street. So I'm done. I'm gone. I know I'm dead. So once I make up my mind that I know I'm dead, and just so we know again, just to make it clear, never would rat. I never said, oh, wow, maybe I can make a deal. You're dead. You're going to jail for the rest of your life. So now I'm in a desperate situation, but I'm not willing to rat. So I'm looking for anything. I'm drawing straws. I'm pulling at anything. What can I do to save myself? Not ratting, never going to rat. But what else can I do?
Are you thinking of unaliving yourself at this point? Or no?
What? Thinking of what?
Like unaliving yourself?
What's unaliving? I'm not familiar with the term.
Suicide?
Oh, I'll be honest with you. When I was on the street, that didn't cross my mind. At some point when I was sitting in a jail cell and I had a lot of regret for all the things I did, I don't know. You just wish the ceiling would fall on top of your head. You'd rather be dead than alive. But no, I wasn't thinking about that. Crossed my mind going to Sicily. I had some friends that were from we used to call them quote unquote. We didn't think of it as a derogatory name, but it is. There was greaseballs we knew, guys from the other side. That was stand-up guys, honorable guys. You go to Sicily and stay there for a while. We'll put you somewhere in the town. And I said, how am I going to leave my family? And they never hear from me again. They'll torture my family, the feds. They're going to constantly pressure my family, and I'll just be shifting the pain that I'm trying to save for myself onto them, because the FBI will be watching them for the rest of their lives. I couldn't do that. So anyway, P.S. one day, Pete Gotti says, I'm in the company of Pete Jr. Pete Gotti says Mickey Rourke wants to do a rap song about John Sr., who had just been sentenced to life. He goes, Mickey Rourke, the actor, wants to do a song about him. He's got this rap group in California that said they want to make a song and put it out that how John got railroaded. So I said, how let me do that? He goes, you? What are you talking about? Like I robbed an almond car like the day before. Like, what are you talking about? So I go, I got no defense. I helped John. I'm thinking, and they come after me. And when I get arrested, rather, I could say, well, they came after me because I made a song to stick up for John. That's why they're coming after me. At least I have a defense, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking in my head. So I said, let me do it. So we reached out to Prime Minister Pete Nice of Third Base. I got a hold of him through a friend I knew. And Pete Nice was a gem of a guy. We went to Peter Luger's in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I said, I want to take you to dinner. I want to make you a proposition. So we went, me, Pete Gotti Jr., and Pete Nice. Prime Minister Pete Nice went to Peter Luger's in Brooklyn, and over a steak dinner, I said, look, I want you to teach me how to rap. And he goes, sure, what do you want to rap about? I go, I want to rap about John Gotti, how he got railroaded. So he said, sure, I'll help you out. So he had a connection with Sam Sever, who used to lay down tracks, famous in his day, hip hop tracks and stuff. He had a connection with Chung King's studio down in Manhattan. I think it might have been in either Little Italy or Chinatown, or maybe the Village. It was downtown. And he goes, I'll set up everything and we'll get you going. So then I went to Fat George DeBello, who recently passed away, unfortunately, rest his soul. And I said, hey, Fatso, do me a favor. Can you do me a favor and write a song about John? I'm going to sing it. I didn't know how to write. I taught myself how to write in jail years later. So I says, can you do me a favor, write a song about John, how he got railroaded? I'm going to sing it. Pete Nice from Third Base is going to bring me to the studio and teach me how to sing. So he goes, sure. Because George used to do like rap songs, used to make up in his own head as he was hanging out by the club. George used to work the Bergen and also too around the corner, John Jr.'s club. He used to be back and forth sometimes, but he was always there. He was pretty much raised by the Gottis. So he wrote a song about John. And that's it. Then I went to the studio. Pete Nice, laid down the track with Sam Sever, taught me how to rap, and the song did pretty good. It was out for
where
a while.
Where did they put it out, and what were you thinking when it gets released?
It was wild. So the newspapers covered it. It went all over the place. There was a lot of press. I got some. If you go to my website, louisferrante.com, LOUISFERRANTE.com. First of all, there's some articles on there talking about it. And I also got like a section where I found old records and tapes, cassette tapes and LPs, and I put them up for sale on the website because I don't know what to do with them, so it's like, they were laying in the garage. So they were leftovers from the first run. So, but anyway, it was selling. It was on like Hot 97, used to be a big station back then. It was on Hot 97. We booked advertising. I probably spent like 10, 15, maybe 20 grand on advertising.
And you're on the run at this time, right?
No, I'm waiting for the indictments to come down. So it's not like I'm a fugitive, but I'm going back and forth to my house. It's not like I'm on the lam, but I'm waiting for the indictments to come down, and I know they're coming. So we get the song out, and then sure enough, the song's out. It's doing well, and then the indictments start rolling down. So now I'm getting picked up off the street. Secret Service surrounded my house with bulletproof vests and machine guns. FBI. Organized crime task force. Everybody indicted me. I had 3 indictments. So in the end, I says, all right, and I got the song. So I hired the radical civil rights attorney. He used to jump to the defense of anybody whose civil rights were violated at the time, William Kunstler. Some of your older listeners might remember him. He was a really, really big attorney. He went into the Attica riots to negotiate with the prisoners who were holding guards hostage at Attica State Prison in New York. That's how long he'd been around. He represented the Chicago 7 back, when they caused hell for the Democratic National Convention. He represented Martin Luther King. He represented Malcolm X. He rode the buses in Montgomery, Alabama, the Freedom bus rides. He was way, way, way deep into history. And I said to Kunstler, I go, do me a favor, will you represent me? I wrote a song about John. And he says, anybody who's a friend of John is a friend of mine. You got it. So he took my case and he represented me, and he used the defense that the feds came after me after I put the song out, which was a bogey defense. The feds had every reason to come after me. Obviously, now I could talk the truth, right? But back then I'm fighting for my life. So in the end, he represented me, and we brought the song into the trial, into trial. My first case, I went to trial there was a bullshit case and there was a big case. The bullshit case, I was only facing 5 years, a nickel, if I blew trial. So I figured I'd roll the dice with that one. And then I'll figure out with the FBI case, they came down with a big indictment it was a Hobbs Act racketeering indictment. That was interstate commerce for all the hijackings and heists and stuff. So the first case, I went to trial and he tried to bring it in. And the judge said, look, he could bring in the song, but he's got to take the stand to bring it in. You got to put him on the stand, have direct, when they do direct before cross-examination, you could have him bring in the song on direct, but then the prosecutor could get him on cross. And if the prosecutor gets him on cross, then the prosecutor could ask him about all his relationships and everything he's done. So if you want to put him on the stand, go ahead. That's how you get the song in. This is all on record too, all court documents for this stuff and newspaper articles. So he ends up, the lawyer says, Kunstler says to me, look, you want to take the stand? We bring in the song. I go, I can't do that. So he goes, what do you mean? I go, they're going to ask me a million things I can't answer.
Yeah.
I go, it's like, I'm going to talk about the song and then I'm going to be mute the rest of the time. Yeah. So it's going to look ridiculous. I said, so, I'm dead. So we couldn't bring it in. They had a hearing outside of court to see if we could bring in, see if we could win, bring it in without me taking the stand. We lost that hearing. And then, but the newspapers kept saying that Ferrante says he's innocent because he was charged after the song came out. So the newspapers were trying to I got the right press, and Kunstler was trying to get it in, but it didn't save me. And in the end, so I lost that case. I got the nickel that I had coming. And then I got the FBI indictment with all the heists and hijackings. And then me and my co-defendants, there was 8 of us that didn't rat. And we all took a plea on that, a global plea.
And how much was the plea for?
Well, in the end, I got 13 years. And the reason why I got 13, they were offering us, so the feds were offering us 20 years, take it or leave it, for a long time. They said, you take 20 years across the board for me. And there were 4 of us that were on the top of the indictment, like charged with the worst stuff. And then the other 4 were sort of minor guys. So the top 4, they said, take 20 years apiece, go on your way. And we were like, no, let's keep fighting it and see what happens. So at some point they came down, they said, look, we fought for 3 years. I had the best attorneys money could buy. After Kunstler died, I had 7 attorneys I went through and spent big wood on attorneys.
A lot of money. Holy
a lot of money. In the end, never forget this. The strong take from the weak and the smart take from the strong. And the smart were the lawyers. So we took money from people by robbing, everything else we did, extortion and all the other crap that we were involved in. But in the end, the smart take from the strong. The lawyers come in who went to Ivy League schools and law schools and all that other crap. And they go, here, give us $500,000 for this, give us 200 for that, give us 100 for the appeal. And they take all the money in the end. So the money goes through this vicious cycle, but the smart people who went to school end up with all of it in the end. Mark those words, it never fails. So whatever the case is, I dish out all this money for attorneys. And eventually they come down, they said, look, if I take 13 years, then they'll give my co-defendants 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 down the line. But it's got to be a global plea. So we didn't know. We said, well, something's up, We don't know what it is, though. They're offering us good deals. Let's take it. Maybe we wore them out. We've been fighting these cases for 3 years. We were in the detention center, Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn for 36 months. So we said, what do you guys want to do? I said, they go, look, Lou, they're giving us good deals, like 9, 8, 7, 6 down the line for my other guys. So they go, look, if you take the 13, we get the good deal. Let's take it. So I said, fine. So we all copped out. And just to give you an idea, too, of how I would never do anything to hurt anybody in that life, because I felt like so strong against never ratting. That was my mindset back then. I would never rat on my co-defendants. I would never rat on anybody. So I said, when I went to court, each guy goes out. We all took pleas. So each guy goes out to take the plea allocution alone. So when I went for my plea allocution, they dropped the rest of the counts on the indictment and they give us this. I copped to 1 hijacking. And when I copped to that, the judge reads the prosecutor or the judge, I think the judge reads the plea allocution. And he says, you and so-and-so and so-and-so committed this hijacking on such and such a date. And I said, Your Honor, these are in public records. You could find them. Your Honor, I won't take that plea. He goes, what's wrong with it? You agreed to it. That's why you're here today. I go, no, I understand that, but I won't mention another person's name in my own guilt, my own, I forget my exact words again. It's public record somewhere. But I said, I won't mention somebody else's name in my plea allocution. I did this alone. He goes, but you didn't do it alone. I go, well, I can't take the plea then. So he says, will you accept the plea that says you and your Confederates robbed this truck? And I didn't even know what the word Confederates meant. Confederates, what does that have to do with the Civil War? Right?
Yeah.
But anyway, my lawyer goes, he means your friends, your co-defendants. So I said, okay. I go, I'll accept that. So I accepted a plea that just was basically my name only, so that I could go back to the jail, the detention center in Brooklyn, and tell my co-defendants I didn't mention anybody's names. And they, I assume they did the same thing with me, but whatever the case was, they didn't rat. I didn't. We go on our merry way. And then I meet the guy. I gave a shout out to Marcos Pappas. I meet Marcos Pappas in jail. And we found out that there was a technicality on my plea allocution that he felt was reversible with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Marcos was doing 35 years. No rat, never ratted, nothing. Good stand-up guy. And he goes, let me help you. I'll teach you law. We'll file the brief ourselves. Forget all your lawyers. I hired and fired 7 attorneys by then. He goes, tell them all to go shit in their hat. We'll do this ourselves. So I said, great. So we ended up filing a plea. It made case law. We filed it with an appeal with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And I reversed the case on a technicality. I wasn't innocent, but I reversed it on a technicality. There were other things in the plea allocution. Maybe I confused the judge when I was talking about other people. But whatever the case is, he made a lot of mistakes on the plea allocution. You're supposed to do this right in court. A man's guilt is on the line. He's taking a plea. It's a contract. It's a binding contract. So Marcos helped me find sort of like little technicalities, and we reversed that case. So now I come back to court 6.5 years later, by the way. This wasn't like 10 minutes later. I'm in jail 6.5 years by the time I reversed the case. I reversed the case. I come back to court, and I I said, I'm pleading not guilty now because all my co-defendants, there was 8 of us, they're all gone. So now I'm alone. So it's hard to convict me of crimes I did with all these other people when I'm by myself over here.
And they're already convicted.
Gone.
Yeah, they're already. Yeah.
And they're all stand up, Bill. None of them are going to come in and testify against me. Every one of them stood up. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna roll the dice. Now I know that they gave one guy the witness protection program. That's how they indicted us. They did eventually put a guy into the witness protection program. He was supposedly the main snitch against us. So I says, okay, I got to face this guy. But a lot of years passed. He was really close with another one of my co-defendants, not so much me. You know, we went on a couple of scores with him. We used him once in a blue moon, but he ain't got a lot to say about me. I'm gonna take a shot. So I call for a quick jury. You know, pick a jury, 30 days or whatever it is. So in that time, the government moves to dismiss the case. And I said, whoa, wow, I got lucky. So what happened here? Well, apparently what we learned is the guy who went into the witness protection program had violated the program and was thrown out of the program, as I understood it, before we even took the pleas. So they never had a case against us. But so it was wild. But by the grace of God, this was what was meant to be, because that's how going away all those years is how I changed my life around and how I realized I'm done with this life. I'm done with crime. I'm done with all that crap. It was a snake pit. I don't trust any of the guys that were involved in that life, only very few that I could consider my real friends.
Yeah.
And I was just done with it. And I changed my life around. I taught myself how to write. I became an author. And today, as I sit here with you today, I'm a best-selling author. My books have been translated into 20 languages around the globe. And I taught myself how to write in a prison cell. So I would have never had that opportunity had I known the guy violated the program, because I would have rolled the dice and said, pick a jury then, not now. I would have had the case dismissed then. I would have never did it.
Where would you be now? Where would you be now? You'd still be in the street. Something would have happened.
Yeah, or I would have got clipped, or maybe I would have got busted for something that got me life, you know, in the end. So I wouldn't have been here talking to you. That's for sure. Yeah. My mind wouldn't have shifted.
So what caused you to write the book? Like, how did all that transpire? And
well, the new book I just wrote, which is the one I would love to talk about. It's called Borgata: Rise of Empire. The new book was written because I took a trip I get invited all over the world to speaking engagements. I used to before COVID, more so. And COVID, everybody does everything visual now, you know, like online. But for the most part, I used to just hop on a plane and go anytime they invited me somewhere. And I was in Sicily, and I met Lord George Weidenfeld, one of the biggest publishers of the 20th century. And Lord George asked me, he goes, I want to publish your next book. And I was like, whoa. You know, I came here to speak at a German media company, you know, like just speak like something unrelated to books. They were sort of like they were a media company, but press, like daily press publications. You know, I'm there to speak at that, and I'm in Sicily. I'm enjoying Agrigento. It was more so like, you know, it's doubling as a sort of vacation to Sicily, which was great. And here I am offered a book deal. So the next day we had lunch overlooking the ruins of Agrigento, and Lord George said to me, I want you to write a history of the American Mafia beginning here in Sicily. And I'm like, whoa, wow. You know, it's like an offer I can't refuse. So yeah, it was wild. So he thought that what he believed was, look, given your past, you're the guy to write it, because you were in the life, you were involved in it, you were around the biggest guys. You know, I was around the Caesars. You know, I might have been a Roman gladiator in the Colosseum because I was low and I was in the trenches every day. I wasn't any big ranking guy, but I'm around the biggest guys in mobdom. You know, Vic Arena Senior was the boss of the Colombo family. John Gotti is the boss of the Gambino family. Vic Amuso, I pass his house every day. He's the boss of the Lucchese family. And Joe Messino, I pass his house every day. He's the boss of the Bonanno family. I'm around these guys every day. And Chin Gigante, to this day, I'm 35 years later, I'm best friends with Chin's daughter, Rita Gigante, one of my dearest.
Yeah, Rita. Shout out to Rita.
Rita, I love you, Rita. So yeah, I mean, I spoke to her this morning. Rita's the best, but I'm glad you did a shout out to her. So I'm in and out of Rita Gigante's house, although I didn't know the Chin. You know, I mean, Chin was in the city living with his mother, walking around in a bathrobe. But you know, I'm still friends with Rita, and there was a big beef because when Chin found out I'm in his house in Old Tappan, Jersey, he went ballistic. He called Rita to the city. He goes, "What's a guy from the Gambinos doing in my house?" So she's like, he's my friend. He's my dear friend. He goes, I want him out of there.
Didn't you walk around to robe on?
Oh, bro, I got stories for you. Bro, I got stories for you wouldn't believe. I used to drop off Rita and her mother, sometimes Rita or her mother, but usually Rita and her mother. I would stay there over the weekend at the house in Old Tapan. And then Sunday morning, I would drive them both to the bridge, to the George Washington Bridge. And then this guy, Bruce, would pick them up and bring them into the city to see Chin. So, and now I would tell my friends, at some point, I kept it in the beginning, I kept it from them even, that I'm staying at Chin's house in Jersey. But at some point or another, I told Pete Gotti, I go, yeah. He goes, where do you disappear every weekend? You know, he thought maybe I'm taking a girl to the Poconos or something. Where you going? Yeah. I says, no, I'm staying by Chin's house. He goes, Chin's house? What, are you kidding me? So I go, yeah, I'm close with the daughter. So P.S., I would bring Rita and her mother Olympia to the bridge. And then I would drop them off with this guy, Bruce, on the Fort Lee side, the Jersey side of the George Washington Bridge. And then I would shoot in, back to Queens where I lived. And this old man, I only knew him as Bruce. He would get out of his car, an old jalopy. He drove an old ship box, white wall tires, hubcaps. I'm like, who the frig's got hubcaps? Who ever even heard of a hubcap? It's like an antique, a hubcap. You got to buy a hubcap on eBay, right? Yeah. So I'm like, who is this? So this old man, he would give me like a wet fish handshake. And he'd go, how you doing, Louie? And I'd say, hey, how you doing, Bruce? And I'd pass off the ladies, Rita and her mother, to Bruce. And then I would shoot over the bridge and go home. So years later, I just thought he was some like Shimoni that Chin was sending to pick up his wife and his daughter to bring them in on Sunday for dinner with the mother at the apartment. I never knew who this guy was. I just figured like he was just a guy who runs errands for Chin. Years later, I'm in jail, and I think I was with Joe Watts, and he was reading the newspaper, and he says, oh, Bruce Palmieri died, the Chin's guy. I said, Bruce Palmieri? So whatever it was, there was a picture, and he shows me, and I go, son of a bitch, that's Bruce, the guy, Vito Bruce Palmieri. I knew him as Bruce. He was a captain with the Genovese crew, with the West Side. Yeah. I had no idea. So I'm going to give you, that's how low-key Chin's guys were. You wanted to give this guy a bowl of soup. You never knew in your wildest dreams he was a skipper. Meanwhile, this guy's a skipper. And I had no idea. So, I mean, that's like, give you an idea how low-key the West Side was on the Chin. Yeah. I mean, that's like the best way. I had no idea who he was. I wouldn't have guessed he was a skipper in a million years. All the skippers I knew, you could see they were tough guys from a mile away. This guy, was a low-key guy. He's like, hey, don't, Louie, shook my hand, gets in the car, can just see over the wheel. Can't even see over the wheel. I'm like, son of a bitch, man. So, but anyway, it gives you an idea. So getting back to the book, Lord George asked me to write the book. I'm like, you know what? I was around the biggest people, the biggest families. I was in the trenches. I know what it is to make a buck. I know what it is to go to jail. I know what it is to have a gun to your head and to have a gun to somebody else's head. The whole thing. I know it's soup to nuts, this life. I mean a gun to your head, meaning like in a bad, tough position. Not literally speaking, but you understand. Yeah. So I said, you know what? Maybe this is for me. So I thought my other books took me a year to write. So I figured, it's going to take me like a year, maybe 2. It took me 7 years. I locked myself in a room for 7 years. And I think I wrote what is appearing to be the New York Times covered it, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, NPR News, left and right publications have all covered the book, and they're hailing it. A lot of Publishers Weekly hailed it as one of the best books written about the mob. As we sit here today, I may have written the book about mafia history. And what I do in the book, just so you know, Bill, you're a guy who likes the real stories. So you appreciate the real stories. A lot of people who watch mob stories, they'll watch a documentary or they'll read a book. Frank Costello did this. Albert Anastasia did that. So volume 1 is history of the mob. I get up to date by volume 2 and 3. But volume 1 is the old style, Lucky Luciano days. When I read these stories, I know right away if it makes sense, it could have happened or it didn't. Yeah. I mean, like if you hear Lucky Luciano and Frank Costello did this, that, and the other thing, if it's true or not. Or if it's bullshit. Like, for example, I read Albert Anastasia pushed around the baby stroller as he was trying to clock Thomas Dewey and see his movements. Albert Anastasia was a boss at the time. He ain't pushing around a baby stroller. He'd send some dude to go do it for him. He ain't doing that himself. So I go, come on, who made up this story? So time and again, then there were stories like where I knew people involved, like towards the end of the book, towards the end of volume 1, Borgata, Rise of Empire. I urge all your listeners and viewers to go get the book. If you love mob history, read the book. But towards the end of volume 1, I talk about Frank Costello dies. And they said somebody blew up the crypt. So they said that Frank Costello, they said Lilo Galante did it, Carmine Lilo Galante, who went on to become the boss, sort of like acting boss or pretender to the throne of the Bonanno family. He was an underboss, but he tried to take power from Rusty Rustelli. And they said that he always hated Costello, so he blew up the crypt. And I go, come on, man. This guy's a grown man. He's not a vandal. He's going to commit vandalism. Like he got out of jail and he's just going to go attach a little bomb to his crypt. That's something a kid would do. There's no way. So I talked around. I spoke about it with a few people I know, and I had an old timer who said, Louis, we did that. I said, what? He goes, yeah, we were looking for the gold. I go, what? What? Goes, look, he had no kids and grandkids. He was a bazillionaire. We figured he was buried at least with a gold watch, a gold chain, gold pinky ring, and gold went from like $20 an ounce to $200 an ounce. And he goes, so we figured he's, go get the gold. And I go, you got to be kidding me. So, notwithstanding that my friend just admitted to being a grave robber, but whatever the case is, he goes, we were looking for the gold. So in the end, I said, let me see if I could verify this. So I went and I looked. When Costello died, gold was like $24 an ounce. When the crypt was blown up, it went to like $190 an ounce. So there's your proof.
Was there any gold? Did they get any gold?
I didn't get into it. I don't, there's questions I don't ask, right? So, it's like, I couldn't believe he was giving me what he gave me, which was a gem. But, I didn't say, did you pull the ring off his skeletal finger? I didn't get that deep. But whatever the case is, I also found an article that said the body was tampered with. Nobody ever talked about that. So it made sense. What my friend told me was legit. But whatever the case is, that's one myth I was able to debunk. But there's throughout the whole book, I talk about Bugsy Siegel when he was clipped in Vegas. I break down why he was killed. There's a lot of stories that are out there. It's bullshit that he was robbing with Virginia Hill. They got mad at him. That was the propaganda the mob put out. A lot of times the mob puts out its own propaganda to hide the real reason why they're doing something. They're not going to tell you why they're making a move. If we killed Bill Staxx for his money, we're not going to tell you we killed Bill Staxx for his money. Like a guy like Sam.
You're going to say Staxx was stealing and we had to kill him because he was trying to steal from us.
Exactly. We found out that Staxx was robbing this and Staxx was robbing that. And they'll throw in, maybe you dated a woman after she lost her husband. They'll say, well, Staxx started dating her before the husband was dead, so you're not allowed to do that. And meanwhile, you'll be like, no, I never touched her. I never even talked to her before the husband was dead. Well, we just, we shifted a few months back and we say Staxx was seen with her at Spumoni Gardens before the husband was clipped, before the husband died. So now we think Staxx was fooling around with the wife.
Yeah.
All these stories are usually made up to cover what the real reason was, which was we wanted Staxx's money. So the mob puts out its own propaganda. So time and again, when I would spot the mob propaganda, I would break it down for the reader. And I've had a phenomenal response. People have emailed me and saying, I just knew something was wrong with this. And until you broke it down for me, I never knew exactly what it was. Thank you. So I'm getting a lot of that. I'm getting a lot of, I'm debunking myths throughout the whole.
So you break down the myth, right, on what happened, and then you explain what you think happened, or do you do the research to find out what really happened?
Both. Exactly. Great question, Bill. I do exactly both. So usually I'll do as much research as I can to see where the story might have came from and figure out the origin, if it was false, where it might have came from. So if I could tell you the origin, maybe you'll know. Then we could figure out that it's not true. The next thing I do is try to figure out what really happened. And then I break down into the best of my knowledge and the best of my research and the best opinion with my own insights and experience. This is what probably happened. And if you're reading the book and you're learning, as you go, as I'm going through the stories, my goal is to make, I don't have to make you, I don't have to get your mind into the mobology. You're in it already. You understand it. But the average casual reader who picks up the book, I want them to understand it too. Somebody who reads other things too, but just picks up a mob book once in a blue moon. They don't understand the stories. They don't know. They don't have sort of that bell that goes off like you would have or I would have when we hear something that's not true. We know this life, so the bell goes off. You're involved with it every day. I was involved with it every day. They don't. Your average reader goes to Barnes and Noble, picks up the book. Maybe he's a bus driver. Maybe he reads 2 mob books a year. So I'm trying to get him to think like a mobster too. So by the time he puts down the trilogy, he's going to go, wow, I'll spot something in a minute now if it's not true.
Yeah.
Or I'll see a documentary. Last night I got off my last bus route and I'm watching a documentary before I fell asleep on History Channel. Bang. I read the book. Lou taught me how to think, and I spotted that shit right away. My goal is to make, I don't have to make you, I don't have to get your mind into the mobology. You're in it already. You understand it. But the average casual reader who picks up the book, I want them to understand it too. You know, somebody who reads other things too, but just picks up a mob book once in a blue moon. They don't understand the stories. They don't know. They don't have sort of that bell that goes off like you would have or I would have when we hear something that's not true. We know this life, so the bell goes off. You're involved with it every day. I was involved with it every day. They don't. Your average reader goes to Barnes and Noble, picks up the book. Maybe he's a bus driver. Maybe he reads 2 mob books a year. So I'm trying to get him to think like a mobster too. So by the time he puts down the trilogy, he's going to go, wow, I'll spot something in a minute now if it's not true.
Yeah.
Or I'll see a documentary. Last night I got off my last bus route and I'm watching a documentary before I fell asleep on History Channel. Bang. I read the book. Lou taught me how to think, and I spotted that shit right away. So that's sort of what I want to do. I want to bring the reader along with me, teach the reader how to think like a mobster, so that when that reader puts down that book and puts down eventually the trilogy, Borgata, Rise of Empire, they're going to understand, I know everything within the Borgata, how it works, how people think, because I break down how people think. Years ago, I read Thucydides. Thucydides used to write and tell you how people think, what they were thinking before they made a decision in the ancient Greek world. Those are the people I like to read. A lot of the Greek thinkers like that. Herodotus did it a little. I forget who did the March of the 10,000. Thucydides was the Peloponnesian War, but somebody else did the March of the 10,000. So you think they teach you how these people think. Plutarch did it in Plutarch's Lives. He did the Greco-Roman Lives, and he teaches you how Alexander might have did this or why he did that. Caesar, why he did this. So I do the same thing with mob guys and mob bosses. And I'll also tell you why Castellano got clipped and how he could have avoided it. Maybe how Joseph Massino took over the family and never got clipped, and how he did it until he became a rat. Joe Massino was, sharp as nails. You got to credit for that. He was a Machiavelli, like Machiavelli. He deserved the Machiavelli Award handed to him by Machiavelli. I mean, that's like how good he was until he became a rat, and then kind of like let everybody down, and just now goes down in history as just like the worst mob snitch. But before that, he knew how to do things. So I point out how people do things right, how people do things wrong, and explain to you why somebody died in bed at 90 years old and how somebody else was clipped in the street at 55. So
what do you think about people trying to say now that Joe Watts was bad?
Joe Watts was a man's man. I knew Joe Watts. I was friends with Joe Watts. I was away with Joe Watts. Joe Watts never ratted on anybody. I don't know where the stories come from. I can't figure it out, to be honest with you. But Joe Watts never ratted on anybody. First of all, Joe Watts was one of the smartest mobsters you will ever meet in your life. Sharp as nails. I'm talking about like the Meyer Lansky of today's mob. Knew how to earned millions for the mob, was a legitimate tough guy. They've accused him of a million different things. I don't have to tell what he's been accused of. Everybody knows how tough Joe Watts is. Joe Watts was extremely intelligent. He knew how to fight a case, and he knew how to rat if he wanted to. If Joe Watts wanted to be a rat, he would have figured out how to be a rat. He would have known how to be a rat. So we're supposed to believe, as smart as Joe was, he was so bumbling that he couldn't figure out how to rat. I mean, come on.
Joe Watts spent all that time in prison, right?
Exactly. And the rats, how many rats that get sent away for 30 years? He just got out. He was away all these years. I was away with Joe in 1995 or 6. So all these years later, he just gets out now. Come on, man. This is like, and first of all, I think Sammy put a lot of that shit out. Yeah. And if you listen to Sammy's stories, he tells a lie. He says that they came to talk to him in the Supermax, the feds did. And they flew all the way there, 3,500 miles or whatever. And then he goes, they listen to the video. They came and they spoke to him. And I don't listen to a lot of the videos, but this was sent to me by a friend of mine who knew Joe, was close with Joe too. And he says, Luke, can you do me a favor? I know you were close with Joe. Listen to this video. I said, sure. He says, the feds flew there. And then he goes, they came to my cell. Nobody comes to your cell. They bring you down. Then he says, and they said to me, oh, you know why we're here? No, I don't know why you're here. Well, we can't tell you why we're here. Well, why can't you tell me why you're here? Well, we came because it's bullshit. He makes it up as he goes. And then they told him something about Joe being a rat. Joe was no rat. It's all a lie. Joe was no rat. Joe could have been a rat if he wanted to be. He would have testified and put everybody away. Or he would have never did a day. Even if he was a dry snitch, they would have let him out. But Joe goes 30 years and we're supposed to believe this. I don't know where it came from. I don't believe it. I know people that would have did life if Joe was a rat. So, you know, and let me tell you, I was close with Joe. Joe sends up Charlie Carnisi to see me one day in jail. I'm in jail. This is how much of a friend Joe was and how much of a generous, good guy he was.
Yeah, he was giving a lot of money out, right? He was paying a lot. Wasn't he paying guards off and all this stuff?
Well, a rat would never do this. Let me just tell you my story, and a rat would never do this. Charlie Carnisi comes up to see me. So I tell Charlie about my case. So he's going to come on my case. And I had paid, I told you, I went through 7 attorneys. So I said, Charlie, I'm going to bring you on. I was happy with everything Charlie said. I says, look, I'm going to have him meet one of my friends on the street. He'll straighten out with the retainer. He goes, it's taken care of already. I says, what? Who took care of it? He says, Joe Watts took care of it. I said, you got to be kidding me. You're retained already? He goes, oh, yeah, you didn't know that? So I said, no, I had no idea. So Joe hired Charlie Carnisi to defend me because Joe felt like I was a kid. I was a young kid. I was a good kid. I was a stand-up kid. And nobody was, you know, at that point, sending me money or lawyers. So Joe did it. So that's what a man Joe was. Now, would a rat do that? How many lawyers did Sammy send to represent people? How many shekels did Sammy dish out to defend people? Think about that. Joe would never have done that. Rats don't like stand-up kids and then like them so much that they're going to pay for a lawyer for them. If Joe was a rat, he would have said, you're a stand-up kid too. I spit on you. You're stupid. You should do what I'm doing. Joe was a stand-up guy. So I don't know where that all comes from, but Joe's a man's man. You know, I was one to tell you how close I was with Joe too. When Joe beat the case, Joe got pulled over to the state and he beat the case for the guy who took a couple of pop shots at John. There was a guy, Jeffrey Saccone, I think his name was Chacone or Saccone, took a couple of pop shots at John on 101st Avenue. So Joe was tried for that murder. Joe was acquitted for that murder. He was acquitted in the state. I think Fat Sal Majota or another fat something was his snitch against him. So Joe gets acquitted. Joe called my house. My father, rest in peace. When I called my house from the feds, he says, Joe, I just hung up with Joe from the state. Joe said he got acquitted. He just left the courtroom. So I was the first number that Joe called to tell that he got acquitted. And then I announced it to everybody in the feds. Said, hey, good news, guys. Joe just got acquitted in the state of that murder. So if Joe was a rat, why then was he pulled over from the feds to go through trial in the state for a murder, which he faced life for? Why wouldn't he just say, hey, guys, call the state up and let them know I'm ratting so that they dismiss the charges on some ridiculous bullshit and I could get out of here? Oh, okay, Joe. But that didn't happen. Joe had to go to trial for that murder. Yeah. And Joe got acquitted because he paid the best lawyers money could buy, and he had a good defense. And I don't even know what happened, but maybe he didn't do it, whatever the case was. But Joe got acquitted on that. He went through hell, Joe.
Do you think Mikey Scars and Junior Gotti felt some type of way about Joe Watts?
Say that again.
Do you think Mikey Scars and Junior Gotti felt some type of way about about Watts's relationship with Gotti Sr.?
Did they feel how about it? I don't know.
Like,
I don't.
Do you think that they like were angry that he was making
money? I mean, I can't speak for Mikey Scars or John Jr. I have no idea. I can't speak for them, but I know that a lot of people in the life were jealous of Joe. I'm going to tell you that right now. A lot of people in the life were jealous of Joe because Joe was the right-hand man of John Gotti. Joe, to give you an idea how Joe was trusted and how he definitely wasn't a rat. Joe was close with Carlo Gambino. Carlo dies. Joe was close with Paul Castellano. Castellano gets clipped. Joe's supposedly on it. Okay, whatever the case was, if that's true, who knows, right? Let's assume he was, whatever the case was. Then Joe becomes best friends with John Gotti. Joe's always at the top. If Joe wanted to be a rat, he could have took down the whole Gambino crime family from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
He would have been the greatest rat ever. So
Probably
we're supposed to
bigger
believe
than Sammy, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of jealousy with Sammy because Joe was closer with Frankie DeChico than Sammy ever was. Sammy pretended he was close to Frankie DeChico. Maybe he was a little, maybe he wasn't. Frankie wasn't Sammy's skipper. Toto was. So there was a relationship with Sammy and Frankie, but Frankie's best friend was Joe Watts. Joe Watts was close with Frankie. And the only reason Joe Watts then didn't get raised is because he wasn't straightened out. He was half Welsh. They call him Joe the German, but he was a Welshman. He was half Welsh, half Italian. So
Yeah.
Joe would have been then the underboss. Joe would have been everything Sammy was. And Joe was the guy with the big balls. Sammy wasn't. Sammy had no balls. Why do you think Sammy was sitting in the baby seat? Sammy was in the car with John during the hit on Paul.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that they drove by the body?
Let's assume it was true, right? Let's assume Sammy was in the car with John, right? Let's just assume for a second that he really was. Let's pretend it's true. If Sammy was in the car with John, you tell me if Sammy was such a tough guy, why he wasn't on the street with the rest of the crew. He ain't pulling notes. I think he admits to one. The other one where he said he had a bad leg and he was in the car on the floor when somebody else shot the guy. He was limping and I was on the floorboards in the back seat. You didn't even get out of the car.
He was the backup shooter in that allegedly, and he said he seen the guy running and he didn't say nothing.
Right.
The other guy in the car said something, but you don't.
So, Bill, that goes back to what I was just saying about you. You know this life, you know the episodes, you know the events, you know when something smells fishy. You just pinpointed one thing right there. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. So there you go. You could probably have a whole show. You could probably literally watch his videos and pick them apart and have a whole show on that every day.
I do that.
Okay. I tip my hat to you. Forgive me. I've been locked in a room for 7 years writing a book, or I would have been watching you. So forgive me, Bill. But I'll tune into you from now and then when I get a chance. But I'm more of a writer. So, but anyway, there you go. Perfect example. I mean, come on, man.
And he says about the bullets in the gun. How did he know what kind of bullets were in the gun if he wasn't the one with the gun?
Right.
He said it was loaded with birdshot and then birdshot.
Yeah.
Oh, because they were shooting pigeons on the roof, but you didn't have the shotgun. So how do you know what bullets were in the gun?
Perfect example. Exactly. Bill, one thing you're going to get out of me is the truth. I was down here. I wasn't up there. I'm never going to pretend I was up here. I was down here. I was in the trenches every day. I hijacked trucks out of Kennedy Airport. I been accused of armored cars. I was investigated for an armored car depot. Everything I say to you is backed by paperwork, and that's it. Everything I even wrote in my memoir, when I wrote a memoir, everything I picked, I could have picked a million different crimes I had committed. I picked everything that I was either investigated for or charged with so that nobody could ever question me. What happens with a guy like Sammy is he runs out of stories because now he's like a celebrity, like a mob celebrity. So he's got to make shit up. So he starts putting himself in places he wasn't. I told you I'm close with Vic Arena. 35 years, Vic Arena Jr., man of men. He beat a murder racketeering indictment, and he left the life like I did with honor. Never ratted. Vic Jr. could have been a big rat. He says, I'll never rat. I'll die in here if I have to. He beats the murder Rico. Vic and I approached, I'm going to tell you a story. Vic and I swore to each other when we were away, we would see each other on the other side and we would leave this life, and we have. And we enjoy each other's company all the time. We do dinner together. We have lunches together. We see each other all the time. Vic and I approached Billy Catolo at the same time that Vic and I made up our minds we were done. Vic beat a murder Rico, and I was able to cop out 13 years after I was facing life. I was facing life not for bodies, but if you took all of the counts I was charged with, every one of them was a violent crime, and you added them all up, I was facing 150 years.
You ain't getting out.
Yeah, you know how it works. Exactly. I got friends charged with the same things I was charged with. They're still away decades later. So if you play the game and you roll the dice and you crap out, you're done. So I'm lucky I got the plea. So whatever the case is now, we know that we were the lucky ones, but we left with honor, me and Vic Jr. But we approached Billy Catolo then, and we said to him, look, we're done. And we said, and Billy swore to us he was leaving the life. Billy said, I'm done too. I got this case. I beat it. I get out. I'm done. Billy Catolo beat a murder RICO too. So they broke up the cases. Billy was the head of one murder RICO for the Colombo War, and Vic Jr. was the head of another one, murder RICO for the Colombo War. Those were the two ones that they beat, and the juries acquitted them. And then the other ones, guys got railroaded, like Joey Amato got railroaded. There was other guys that got railroaded later that they wouldn't let the Scarpa stuff come in on. You're familiar with it. But whatever the case is, we approached Billy Catolo, and Billy Catolo says, I'm done. I'm leaving this life. I'm done. He went back and he got clipped. I mean, that tells you everything, right? So I was trying to tell you, I only have a certain amount of stories. I only lived a life. I only lived one life. I'm not going to implant myself in other people's experiences. I lived one life. It's a set of experiences I had. I know what I was charged with. I know what I did. I know what who was I around at the time. And that's it. I can't make stuff up beyond that. So that's why, my past is my past. I talk about it. I've been asked about it. It's beating a dead horse now. I can't go on and start making shit up. But if you're a celebrity and you get clicks and you have to make more videos all the time, you got to start putting yourself in places. So it's like me now waking up tomorrow and going, oh yeah, I passed Vic Amuso's house that day, which I passed every day. And that day, Vic Amuso walked up to my car and he says, what do you think I should do with gas? So I said to Vic, you know what? Maybe you should clip gas. I think it's a little out of line. Picture me making this shit up. I mean, come on, a guy like you is going to sniff it out right away and go, you think Vic Amuso, maybe Vic Amuso waved to you and said hello. Maybe he liked you. You were a young kid in the neighborhood.
He didn't say it on the Diane Sawyer interview, right?
Exactly. Come on, man. I knew Jimmy Coonan. I was close with Jimmy Coonan. I got close with him in jail in Lewisburg. Jimmy Coonan was a man's man. To me, he was the last boss of the Westies. Jimmy was a man's man. Was
he crazy? Was he like?
No, Jimmy was a smart guy. Jimmy was a sharp guy. Jimmy was a gregarious guy. He was a nice guy. He didn't come across as crazy. I know he's been charged with crazy things. What do
you think of Featherstone? What did he think of?
Mickey Featherstone was a rat. Look, this is a guy. He's around. He rats on him, right? So what Jimmy struck me as a man's man, and I gave Jimmy the same respect I would have given a Don of an Italian family, a boss of an Italian family. I treated him with the same respect that everybody else did because he earned it. He was a man's man. It's the way he carried himself. I hope he gets out now. I think there's somebody's offering him relief now. They're trying to get they're trying to get him out on some type of
compassionate release.
Yeah, I hope he does get out because I think he's done with that life. I don't think he's going back to it. He's old now. It's a different world. He wouldn't even know the people who were involved now. It's like you can't just come out of jail 30 years later and go, here I am, and everybody's just going to go, oh, that's hail to the chief. It's a different world. So I think they should let him out. But whatever the case is, only because I knew him, I'm saying that. And I knew him.
Probably wouldn't even recognize the neighborhood anymore.
I don't even think who knows if he'd even remember me. Who the frig knows, I mean, it's 30 years later. The guy's got to be what, 80? He wouldn't know the neighborhood. The neighborhood's changed. It's probably been gentrified, like you said, right? I mean, it's different.
What about the Gemini twins? You have any dealings with them?
Never met them, never knew them, never met DeMeo, never knew DeMeo. I mean, I grew up with I don't want to get too deep into it, but Brocchini, who was DeMeo's first on the record hit, I think. Off the record hit, but the first wise guy he clipped. His daughter and his nephew were friends of mine just growing up. Nothing to do with the mob, just growing up as they were good kids. They were both nice kids. I'm still friends today with them. But Brocchini was a tragic thing because Brocchini was a man's man. He was a legitimate tough guy. He knocked the shit out of DeMeo. He lit him up. And he gave him a shiner, and DeMeo didn't like it. And then he went and bitched to Nino Gaggi. And he told Gaggi, I want to clip him. As I understand it, Gaggi said, look, he's a made man with the Lucchese crew. You can't. So he goes, well, I'll do it on a sneak. And then they set it up they were robbing his car dealership, and DeMeo killed him. But he did it because he was a punk, DeMeo. DeMeo got, as I said, they had a beef, they had words, and Brocchini knocked the shit out of him. And in China, he had to wear sunglasses for a couple of weeks. And then he had to hide it because he couldn't get the go-ahead to kill him because he's a made guy. And then, so he made it like it was a robbery, and he killed him in his office.
Have you seen a lot of like made guys and stuff get hands put on them?
I saw it happen in jail. I'm not going to talk about it. It happened a couple of times. I don't want to embarrass the guys it happened to. It happens. I had a beef one time with a made guy, a big guy, a ranking guy, and it was a real serious beef. I was in the right. He was in the wrong. I can tell you that right now. Then I'll tell you, and I'll tell you now in hindsight, I was in the right. I'm having a beef with this guy. You got my back. And he says, look, do me a favor. He told me on a visit. He goes, let him raise his hands to you first and let everybody see it. Then he goes, you could sweep the floors with him. And he goes, and I got your back then. And he goes, but do me a favor, let him raise his hands to you first. He goes, otherwise it makes it hard for me. It's a pain in the ass. So I said, no problem. So knowing that, I felt like, I went back upstairs and I, I kind of like, I knew he had my back and I was going to knock the shit out of this guy, but I had to let him raise his hands first. He was a ranking guy. I felt like I'm a man. I'm doing my time. I'm facing life. So are you. We're both equal now. We both got jumpsuits on. Forget about all that ranking shit. I had a friend of mine one time read the riot act to a couple of guys. He says, look, you don't have your black Lincolns and your violin cases in here. It's me and you, mano to mano. So if you want to step. If not, shut up. And they shut up. So, it's a different world. I'm not knocking all these guys. These, a lot of made guys are tough guys. A lot of ranking guys are tough guys, legitimate tough guys. But there are guys that slipped in and they're revealed for who they are when they're in there. And not everybody takes kindly to it. So without giving names, I'm just going to tell you it happens now and then. I felt like I'm a man. I'm doing my time. I'm facing life. So are you. We're both equal now. We both got jumpsuits on. Forget about all that ranking shit. I had a friend of mine one time read the riot act to a couple of guys. He says, look, you don't have your black Lincolns and your violin cases in here. It's me and you, mano to mano. So if you want to step. If not, shut up. And they shut up. So, it's a different world. I'm not knocking all these guys. These, a lot of made guys are tough guys. A lot of ranking guys are tough guys, legitimate tough guys. But there are guys that slipped in and they're revealed for who they are when they're in there. And not everybody takes kindly to it. So without giving names, I'm just going to tell you it happens now and then. Look, John Gotti was a man's man. Somebody gave him a shiner in jail. Somebody said, look, I'm doing life. You're doing life. I don't care if you were on the newspaper covers every day and nobody ever heard of me. I'm doing life. You're doing life.
Yeah, the AB said, where's all your guys at? Let them come.
You're in jail.
I don't see any around here.
Yeah, you're in jail. So, it is what it is, right? So there's incidents that happen, and once he raises his hands to you, nobody's allowed to take your manhood. So, it's just the way it is. But whatever the case is, it happens now and then. Yeah, again, I don't want to give up names.
Isn't Ronnie out of prison now?
I hope he gets out soon. He's, as far as I know, unless he got out in the last couple of weeks, as he was in last time I know. But
yeah, I've heard someone said he got out, but I don't know if it's true.
I hope so. I mean, I talked to his wife like a couple of months ago. And as far as then, he was, there's a good briefing. Hopefully he gets out. Ronnie's a good man. He's a good father. He's a good grandfather now. He's just a good man. He's a good person. Notwithstanding that life, he was raised in that life. He doesn't know anything better. Unlike me, I came into this life. I came into the world. So it was easier for me to leave it. I didn't rat. I left with honor, but I left it. It's not my father, my grandfather, my uncle, my cousin. It's just me. So it was very easy for me to leave. Ronnie's a guy, he grows up in that world. His grandfather was with Joe Bonanno, came from the other side. His uncle, his cousin, the whole family's involved. So he's raised in that world. Ronnie's a man's man. Ronnie would never rat on anybody. He's a man's man. Guys are going to watch this and call me a rat. You can't stop it. You can't stop. They're idiots. I'll tell you right now. Every one of you who does that is a moron. I never ratted on nobody. I never testified against nobody. I never put nobody in jail, and I never would. I'm talking about stuff from 30 years ago. Like, come on. But whatever the case is, you're going to have people who say that. So what? And they're sitting on their armchair. It's like an old dog's bed. Their ass is beating up the cushion. They're clicking, at the end of the night, they can't even see anymore because they watched 500 videos and they made 500 stupid comments. You can't stop them, like you said, Bill. Ronnie would never, and Ronnie, let me tell you, Bill, Ronnie was the kind of guy, as a friend, let's say you had nothing to do with the life and you went to Ronnie and he says, Ronnie all your life since you guys, we're rolling around on a big wheel, on the corner of your block, you know?
Yeah.
Let's say you went to him and he says, Ron, I got a kid that's sick and I don't have medical insurance. I can't afford it. I need 25,000. I swear to you, nothing to do with the mob. You got nothing that you could pay Ronnie back with. You can't go do a score with Ronnie. You can't go Shylock money for Ronnie. You don't gamble. You know, you're not running a book for him. He would give you the 25,000 if it was your kid and you went to him. That's how he was. That's the kind of man he was. And nothing in return. When I came home from jail, I go, Ron, I'm done. He says, you're done? So Ronnie would have did anything for me. So I go, Ron, I'm done. Most of the guys I said that to put their sneakers on and ran away from me. They have no need for me anymore. No use for me. Yeah. If I'm not taking down trucks, if I'm not doing things on the street, they don't need me anymore. Ronnie said, I'm still your friend. I'm glad you're done. You need anything, I'm here. That's a man. That's a man's man. That's beyond the mob.
Yeah.
He knows I'm finished. He knows there's nothing he could get out of me in that life, and he still wants to be there for me. So, yeah, I got nothing but amazing things to say about him. I hope he gets out, and I hope he's done with it. He leaves like me and Vic Arena left with honor, and he's done. Vic Arena is a man's man too, but Vic Arena realized I'm always the one who's going to go away. My father's doing life. They're going to keep going after me until I get life. And the rats are always
going to get a podcast.
Oh, I don't know. Vic's old school. So, you know,
Vic, huge. It would be huge.
Yeah, I know. Vic's old school. So I'm not sure. You know, me, I'll talk. You know, I feel like I did what I had to do. I'm not ratting on nobody. I know what I can and can't say. You know, I would never put anybody in jail, but Vic's old school. Vic's the kind of guy you might think of like, you know, it's done. I'm not going to talk about it. Yeah.
Hey, got to respect that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you guys like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. And if you don't like it, start your own podcast and go check out his book. The link will be in the description of this video. Is there anyone else you want to give a shout out to?
I think I did. I covered a few guys. I appreciate it. Bill, shout out to you. You're doing a great job, brother. Appreciate it.
You, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad you tear apart Sammy. And I'm glad I'm glad you gave me great conversation with you. Thank you.
Definitely, man. And I'll talk to you later. Hit the like button. Peace.
Be good, Bill.